What's going on, Dolphins? It is your boy Dillon, and I am here today with you so that way I can make my preview video for the Steelers, the Pittsburgh Steelers versus Miami Dolphins. That is going to be tomorrow. So obviously I'm making this video as of today, Sunday. The Dolphins will be playing the Steelers tomorrow on Monday night. It's our only primetime game of the year. It's going to be on national television for all the world to see. So my hope is that we just don't get embarrassed. I honestly think that what this game is going to end up coming down to, I think we're going to end up losing the game. It's at home for the Steelers. They just came off their bye week. They're super healthy. Their defense is ravaging and getting better and better every week. And their offense obviously has been their main issue. They lost Big Ben to injury, and obviously Le'Veon Bell and Antonio Brown left in the offseason. So, they're certainly a lot less powerful, but that defense is getting super strong and appears to be just getting better and better every week. So they are a solid team. Again, they're coming off a bye week, so they're rested. They're fully healthy. It's a home game for them. They're obviously playing a pretty weak opponent, and so on and so forth. So to me, it's going to be a matter of, is it close, or do they just embarrass us on national television, which tends to be the case for this Dolphins team. Unfortunately, in Stephen Ross's tenure, we've managed to be, pretty bad in the limelight. So, obviously that doesn't necessarily mean anything. That's just kind of superstition or whatever. I mean, it happens to be a fact that we haven't performed well on, Monday or Thursday nights in recent memory. But that's no direct indication of how our performance will be. We could perform spectacular and potentially win the game. And will there be opportunities? Sure. But, honestly, I don't think, at the end of the day, though, I really don't think that the offense is, I think last week is probably about as good as you're going to see from the offense. Just for the multiple reasons. This team was designed to be this bad, and the coaching staff appears to actually even be making, on-field calls and decisions with the intent of not succeeding with those calls. So, and like I said, this defense of the Steelers appears to be hella strong. They got some really good guys, including Minka, who I'm going to predict gets an interception off of Ryan Fitzpatrick in this game. He's going to, get a little bit of a revenge on the Dolphins for misusing him, and intentionally, being bad and losing and so on and so forth. And besides, he's just a really good player. And again, he's playing at free safety for the Steelers, the position he should be playing. So let's not forget that as well. The Dolphins grossly, under this regime, grossly misused him. Last regime, to be fair, used him out of position a little bit, but not that much. And it was stuff that he was still relatively familiar with and, fit his skill set, i.e., at slot corner and boundary corner as well. Whereas this regime is trying to use him at linebacker and strong safety, things he's not really suited for. The strong safety, again, you could interchange a little bit because they do have some of the same roles depending on, the design of the play and stuff like that. And, the strong and free safety can be interchangeable, but definitely, he's not suited to play linebacker. He does not have the frame for it, for sure. And his skill set is not exactly suited to that either. Anyway. So it is going to be an interesting game to watch and stuff like that. But to me, it's going to, like I said, it's going to, with all those factors, it's a home game for them. That's a tough place to play. It's going to be loud. They're coming off some momentum. They're looking to start a run, and with their schedule, coming up. They actually really could. Plus, they get Mason Rudolph back, this week. So there's a lot going in their favor, and there is definitely a potential that they could mini blow us out or something like that, and end up running away with this game, and I mean, I think that although at the end of the day, there is also potential for it to be, not a very high scoring game, kind of close, because it could be a battle of the defenses. Although our defense last week played poorly overall, especially in comparison to the rest of the season. However, they are getting, the injuries are just piling up, and it's not really getting any better. So, there is that. But yeah, so they didn't play very well last week, and the offense actually played pretty well, and had the defense played better, along with some other things, if the Bills didn't shoot themselves in the foot, and if the Dolphins coaching staff didn't make, to be as fair as possible, highly questionable decisions late in the game that could have actually swung the game, well, I think that, we could have won that. But they made it clear in my mind that they don't want to win, and they are going to make it, Now, here's the thing. This game, we actually could win this game, and our draft status with the picks that we have not really be in jeopardy. Although the thing is, though, is if the Steelers do go on a run, right, and then our pick could drop out of the top 10, and so we'll see how that plays out. But just from this game, from not thinking about the future, just thinking about this particular game, if the Dolphins were to win this game, it actually would not hurt our draft status at all. And in fact, I think based off of the way everything gets calculated and everything up to this point, I think it actually might even help our draft status, however that would work out. Anywho, so at least that's what I had seen in some places. I don't know the validity of that for sure. Again, I'm not really sure how all those calculations work out. But again, it wouldn't really hurt because we have their number 1 pick as well. So this actually would be an opportunity for the Dolphins to steal a win, not have to go 0-16, and still be able to get the number 1 pick with at least one of our picks, either the Dolphins or the Steelers pick, but still even likely the Dolphins pick. So, for all of those people that want the number 1 pick and get 2-1, so on and so forth, but are rooting for this Dolphins team to go 0-16, I mean, at least you have this one opportunity where you could root for the team and not have to worry about it hurting our draft position. But whatever. I mean, again, I don't think, I personally don't think it's being a true fan to root for your team to lose in any circumstance. But hey, what have you, whatever. So anyway, let me get a little bit more into this though. First of all, I want to give you guys the injury report and some more on that. It's super interesting, and it looks like we're going to have at least one Dolphins player traded before the trade deadline. All indications to this point are looking like that is going to be the case. And there even appears to be a top suitor for said player, but we'll get to that in a second. Let's get to the injury report. First of all, cornerback Xavier Howard was listed as questionable for the Monday night game against the Pittsburgh Steelers when the Dolphins released their final injury report of the week Saturday. Now, real quick, there are 5 players, including the player in question to be traded, that were left home, that did not actually even travel with the team. So right there, that's going to be your 5. That's going to be 5 of your 7 inactives, tomorrow. So there's 2 more spots. So it is going to be really curious to see who those other 2 inactives are, and if Xavier Howard is going to be one of them. And especially too, if Xavier Howard does end up out again for another game, then our defense is going to have a really rough time. I mean, their offense is not spectacular, especially with, losing those 3 guys, Big Ben, Le'Veon Bell, and Antonio Brown, the 3 Bs, right? Their power squad of Bs there. But Mason Rudolph is a solid quarterback. He just, is apparently kind of wary about throwing it downfield. Although he will certainly have a solid opportunity to do so this week, especially if X is out. But they do have, some really good guys. Juju Smith-Schuster is now their top guy. He's a really solid receiver. They do have Vance McDonald at tight end. And James Conner is a really good running back. So they have some options there. Theoretically, Xavier Howard would probably shadow Juju if he plays. So you could probably take away one of their weapons there. Although, if he didn't shadow him, then it does give Juju an opportunity going against other guys that are not so good. So, ideally, if you really wanted to have a sound game plan on defense, you would make sure that if X does play, he does shadow Juju, because you take away then one of their weapons, and they don't have that many on offense. So, but they do have a solid offensive line, and overall their minimum, their floor is average, whereas our floor is like absolutely atrocious. So, there's that. Anyway, let me continue on. Howard, who has missed the past 2 games because of a knee injury, was limited in practice all week. Also, I did say, though, that, until the trade deadline does pass, it will be interesting to see how they handle Howard. The trade deadline is Tuesday, the day after this game. So it'll be interesting to see if they keep him out for this game, which could be a play towards trading him, but we don't know. Or it also could be a play towards just trying to keep him healthy so that knee isn't, a problem later on for your star cornerback who you want to build around. Either one of those narratives is still available. It just depends. If Xavier Howard ends up getting traded before the trade deadline, then it means that they were trying to make sure he stays healthy, so that way they were able to take his very tradable contract and pass him and that onto another team, so that way they could accrue a bunch more, high draft picks and so on and so forth, and prevent further or possible injury to him to hurt his trade stock, his trade value. So we'll see. We have to see 2 things. One, do they hold him out of this upcoming game, or do they let him play? Now, again, he has, from the reports I've seen, he has indicated that he is good to go and ready to play. So number 1, do they keep him out? Is he one of those other 2 inactives come game time? If he is held out, if he does not play, then the second question is, does he end up getting traded by the trade deadline? So there's a lot still going on with that. And we'll have to wait and see how that plays out. Now, again, though, the other thing, though, is if he does play, then we have to wait and see, we have to kind of, hold our breath a little bit and see, how his knee holds up, right? Anyway, so yeah, there's a lot going on with Xavier Howard and things to keep an eye on with that situation. The Dolphins ruled out 2 players on Saturday, safety Rashad Jones and center Daniel Kilgore. Those are 2 of the players that were left back in Miami. So those are 2 of your inactives for sure. We already knew that. I reported on that yesterday. Jones with a chest and Kilgore with a knee also were ruled out on the final injury report before the Buffalo game last week. But obviously that hurts our defense with Rashad Jones out and our offense with Kilgore out. Although, to be fair, the offensive line played respectably last week. But as we've seen, they have had a couple respectable performances, but then have had some really super bad, atrocious ones as well. And not to mention, there's still a lot of flux on the offensive line, and guys are beat up and so on and so forth. So we'll see how that plays out, see how they do. Plus, the Steelers are a really physical team, and their defense is pretty vicious, and so is and physical, and I think they're just gonna give our offense fits. No pun intended. since Fitzpatrick is going to be the starter. But I unfortunately, I think this is going to be a game where, especially, in the limelight, in the spotlight or whatever on Monday Night Football, for the whole world to see against a trending up, Steelers team that gets their quarterback back from injury. Their defense is just balling and getting better, right? I think, coming off a bye, blah, 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 home game, like all of that, I think that they're just going to, for the most part, smother our defense. I think that the spread is 14.5 points. I'll get to my prediction in a little bit. I think we may end up covering the spread, but my prediction is, if they cover the spread, it's not going to be by much. Anyway, I'll get to that in a minute at the end of this. Let me continue on with this. Along with Howard, cornerback Chris Lamons, or Lamons, whatever, with an ankle and a toe. Defensive end Avery Moss with an ankle, and cornerback Nick Needham with a foot were listed as questionable. So all of that is our defense. And again, guys, getting injured on the defense because of how much they've had to play and so on and so forth. Again, let's also not forget that, and I mean, nobody really talks about it now, but, reporters, whatever. Anyway, I was going to mention how hard he works the guys in practice, Flores, because, he's apparently, known for being, really working his guys super hard in practice, which, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if that's continued because nobody's talked about it, so maybe not. But there was certainly a lot of reports about it before. So, I mean, hopefully not. Hopefully he's decided to kind of ease up on the guys a little bit, but, we'll see. I mean, not that we'll ever really know that. Anyway, I'm kind of going off on a tangent now. Let me continue on. Needham was a full participant in practice Saturday, while Moss and Lamons were limited. Moss missed a game against Buffalo after being injured in the October 13th game against the Skins. Pittsburgh had only 3 players with game status designation on its final injury report. All 3 were listed as questionable. Those players are linebacker Mark Barron with a hamstring, linebacker Ulysses Gilbert III with a back, and running back Jalen Samuels with a knee. Nobody really of consequence. Gilbert, who was added to the injury report Saturday, was the only Steelers player limited in the final practice of the week. Everybody on the roster was a full participant, including quarterback Mason Rudolph, who missed Pittsburgh's last game against the Chargers because of a concussion. So that's the injury report. We're hella banged up. They're not really, and they're actually pretty fucking healthy. So there's that. They obviously have that massive advantage over us as well. Let me go ahead now and get to the players that are not traveling with the team. As we already know, Rashad Jones and Daniel Kilgore, I mentioned that we knew yesterday that they were going to be ruled out of the game. As of today, we know that they didn't even travel with the team. Also, though, it appears that the next person that we know is ruled out of the game, why? Because they were left home, is defensive end Avery Moss. So he will not be there. So, another hit to this defense with that. Another player that is being left behind is tackle Andrew Donnell. Non-injury related, apparently. So that's just kind of interesting. I don't know why they would just, maybe he's got some sort of personal issue that he needs to deal with. I don't know. We don't really need to speculate on that. It doesn't really matter. But then the 5th person, and then the fifth person being left home, and then also the 5th person who will be inactive for the game, leaving 2 remaining inactives to be seen, is running back Kenyon Drake. And so obviously that's one less weapon that our offense is going to have for this game against the Steelers on Monday night, but also that's a pretty major indication that Kenyon Drake is going to be traded because he is not injured at all. Whereas at least Rashad Jones, another guy who has been talked about with for potential trades, is being left home with an injury. Kenyon Drake is not injured and would have, expected playing time in this game, but he is being left home. And again, as I mentioned, it looks like you know, Kenyon Drake is now going to be, you know, no longer a Miami Dolphin. So yet another, and look, I mean, we have until Tuesday until the trade deadline is up, you know, and so far it looks like Kenyon Drake is pretty definitive at this point, and looks like the Lions may be a potential trade partner. They need a running back. Kerryon Johnson was put on IR, I believe, and you know, obviously Matt Patricia, he's familiar with Brian Flores and the other guys from the Patriots coaching staff that are here, so they have a relationship. So it's not it would certainly make a lot of sense in a lot of ways. So expect Kenyon Drake to be traded, likely to the Lions, and we'll see how that goes. But it is a pretty for sure thing. But there are, again, other guys that could be potential trade targets. Again, Rashad Jones, Xavier Howard is still not, you know, safe until that deadline passes. You know, Albert Wilson is a guy. Josh Rosen and Ryan Fitzpatrick have both been floated. So who knows? Maybe if Ryan Fitzpatrick has a completely shit game, maybe they do end up trading him before the deadline to somebody who could just use you know, a quarterback, and then they put Rosen, or whatever, or maybe they end up trading Rosen because whatever, you know, blah 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 blah. Who knows? We just have to wait and see. There's obviously, you know, we could speculate all day. It looks like the one for sure thing is going to be Kenyon Drake, which is super disappointing. So real quick, I wanted to read this tweet from Barry Jackson because I thought it was interesting, but it makes a point that I've made on several occasions. And now Barry Jackson is a person that I don't always agree with. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't, right? There's a range. Like, you know, Omar Kelly's another guy that I agree with, sometimes agree with, don't agree with others, right? Some people I agree with more, some people I agree with less. That's how it goes. But this I agreed with, and so he tweets this. For those Dolphins fans who have cited the Browns as an example of how a team that sustains considerable embarrassment and pain can emerge with a bright future, please stop. Dolphins' plan certainly could work, but Browns shouldn't be used as a beacon of hope, for example. Now, he leaves the little caveat in there that this could work. I obviously differ in that regard. You know, I believe that it's going to be a massive failure at the end of the day. And yeah. So obviously I completely disagree with that part of it. But I have been saying for quite some time now that the only real example that you have of a team who, like, you know, obviously legitimately tanked, you know, stocked draft capital and cap space, blah blah blah, and all the things that follow, you know, a tank, right? The parameters of a tank, they're the example. But again, I've been saying at best they are still several years away from proving that they can not only achieve success but maintain that success. Now, again, that was another thing that I was actually wrong about. I played into it even, and I said, man, they are really stacked with talent and they are going to be a beast. Well, I was wrong about that, and they're not. But that's proof, because it's the only real NFL example. There have been, you know, a couple off examples in the past of teams trying to tank, none of which have had any real success. And that's why you don't see it very often in the NFL. Like legitimate tanking in the NFL, you don't see it very often. Every once in a while, people will float that term just because. But more often than not, people do just have rebuilds, right? And what does that mean generally? Maybe it means, you know, a cleaning of the front office or the coaching staff or both. Maybe it means, you know, the current regime just does an overhaul of the roster, whatever, you know. But it doesn't mean, you know, fire everybody in sight front office, coaching staff, and roster wise all at once, intentionally try and make your team, lose and be bad. And then obviously one of the main principles of tanking is to make your team lose and be bad, so that way you can get, high draft position. But rebuilds don't involve shipping off necessarily all of your talent, just so that way you can accrue picks and draft and cap space. That's also pretty specific to tanking, right? Because that's a major indicator that that's what you're doing. Anyway, but yeah, so the Browns, they're 2-4 right now. They're not, they're not the major powerhouse that even, again, I thought they were going to be. And so look, it's just, anyway, you guys know how I feel about that. Let me get back more to the actual reason why we're here, because I want to get into the stats now, league standings for both of the teams. And, I've given you a good amount of my evaluation. Obviously, I'll give you a little bit more, and then I'll give you my prediction at the end of the game. I already predicted that I think Minkah Fitzpatrick is going to come away with an interception off of Ryan Fitzpatrick in this game. A little Fitzpatrick on Fitzpatrick crime. I do think we're going to ultimately lose this game. Again, I think we're going to advance or whatever. I mean, I guess, for the people who want us to go 0-16, it would be advancing to 0-7. My biggest hope for this game is again that we just don't end up embarrassed on Monday Night Football. Although I do think that there is a substantial probability that happens for a number of reasons. But again, last week, any given Sunday, I thought that, I was wrong that the Bills were going to end up, mini blowing us out. Again, which is, us would have been us losing by 15 to 24 points. A full-on blowout is 25 points or more in my perspective, right? So I was wrong about that pleasantly. But again, it was, the first 3 drives, right? Like, so real quick, the way some other people, including like Dudley Do-Wrong, framed it is that the defense did so well on those first 3 drives to hold them to field goals. But that's just not factually correct at all. Because if you just look at what stopped their drives, it wasn't us. The defense actually was getting gashed. In fact, not like, they weren't hemorrhaging, but they were giving up some, their average play was, like 7 or 8 yards or something at that point. The Bills offense was just moving on our defense with ease, right? They weren't like hemorrhaging us. We weren't gashing like that, but they were moving the ball on our defense with ease. Okay, so it wasn't our defense that held them to 9 points. No, it was the fact that they had penalties and drop passes and mistakes of their own. It very easily could have been 21-0, and that game could have gotten out of hand very fast. But any given Sunday, it was the Bills' fault that they didn't. I have a feeling this game's going to be a bit different. And unfortunately, I think this one is going to end up more likely to turn out, that mini blowout to blowout status, for all the reasons. Although I think that, my prediction this week is gonna be a little bit closer. I think that the Dolphins will probably end up covering the spread, but just barely. It's a 14.5 point spread last time I checked. So, but we'll get to that. Let's get into the actual stats and stuff right now. So the Dolphins are 0-6. The Steelers are 2-4. They won their past 2 games. They're coming off a bye. We are playing in Heinz Field there in Pittsburgh, so it's a home game for them. They've got a lot of momentum. They're getting their starting quarterback back. Their schedule is not that bad, and actually, they could make a. And just real quick, because I'm not watching the games right now. I have other things that I got to do, unfortunately. So I'm not watching the games right now. But I just got an update. The Pats defense is crushing the Browns 17-0 right now. So just a couple things about that. One, again, to the point about how the Browns are, just not very good. and shows just how far they actually are. And also, it goes to show how that Patriots defense clearly didn't actually really need Brian Flores, because they got better this year than they were last year. And they're just demolishing people. Anyway, so, yeah, and so the Steelers' schedule looks pretty solid. They actually could, if they get on a bit of a run starting in this game, or, well, you know, they're already 2 games into it, but if they continue that and get and make it a run by making it a 3rd straight, then they'll be 3-4 after this week, and then their schedule looks pretty favorable. They actually could make a playoff push, which would obviously for our draft status be terrible, because if they did manage to squeak into the playoffs, you know, even in a wild card position, that would actually take their pick, which we, you know, as of right now would think might be like possibly a top 10 or something, could actually even slip to late teens, early 20s, depending on how all that shapes up. So, I mean, there's major implications. This is actually a game that even the 0-16 Dolphins fans, which, again, I don't really consider you to be a Dolphins fan, but whatever, this is a game that you actually really would want the Dolphins to win, because if the Steelers go on a run and start winning games, then there goes that pick, right? I mean, we'll still have it, but it's going to start dropping considerably. So we'll have to see how that shapes up. Let's get into league standings. Points per game, the Dolphins are 10.5. Even with our 21 points from last week, that only puts us at 10.5 per game, which is still 32nd in the league. The Steelers are 20.5 points, which is 21st. Yards per game, Miami is at 258.7, which is 31st in the league. The Steelers are 276.5, which is 28th. Passing yards, we have 192, which is 30th. The Steelers are at 200, which is 28th. Rushing yards, that we have 66.7 per game, which is 31st. They are at 76.5, which is 26th. Defensive league standings, we are... So last week we gave up 31 points in that game, all in all, which puts us at 211 points given up in total for the entire season, which keeps us on pace to be historically bad in that category. We still are on pace for that, but we're giving up 35.2 points per game, which is 32nd in the league. Pittsburgh is giving up 21.8, which is 14th. We're giving up 417.3 yards per game, which is 30th. They're giving up 354.3, which is 15th. Passing yards allowed, we're giving up 256.5. That's 22nd, which is the best we've gotten in any category thus far. Although, you know, we'll see how that continues. It depends, you know. I think that the offense is going to be the key on whether or not they like blow us out or it ends up being close. Their offense. Pittsburgh is giving up 244.2, which is 18th in the league. Rush yards, we're giving up 160.8, which is 31st. They're giving up 110.2, which is 18th. And let's also recall, though, this last game against the Bills was the only one so far that we broke 100 yards rushing. Although, that actually theoretically is, at the very least theoretically, is a good thing, considering the Bills had, you know, like a top 3 defense going into that game. But again, though, you know, I think that if the Bills offense would have played better and not shot themselves in their own foot, and if they would have gotten up 21-0 right off the bat, then I think that their defense would have ended up playing a lot better. We probably would not have broke the 100-yard rushing mark. They probably would have gotten more sacks because they would have teed off more on our offense, because we would have been trying to play from so far behind. So we'll see, right? You know, and that's part of what kept it close, like the past 2 games, right? If a team starts running away with this, then it's done and we're gonna get blown out, right? Like if if the team that we play gets up like 14, 17, 21-0, it's going to be pretty much game, set, match after that, because our offense is not going to be able to overcome that or produce. They're going to start pushing it. Both Ryan Fitzpatrick and Josh Rosen would make, incredible mistakes in that kind of a situation. So, anyway, we'll see how this goes. My prediction is it's going to be a bit closer overall. We'll see what ends up happening. So last game, let's get a little bit of a comparison. We had 381 total yards. They had 256. Now, again, they had a bye week this past week, so it was the previous week against the Chargers. We had 272 passing yards. They had 132. We had 109 rushing yards. They had 124. We were 5.8 yards per play. They were 4.6. We had one fumble. They didn't have any. We had one interception. They had one as well. We were 53% on third downs. They were 61% on third downs. We had the ball for 33 minutes and 31 seconds. They had it for 34 minutes and 5 seconds. And we each had 6 penalties. In the passing game, Ryan Fitzpatrick was 23 for 35 for us last week with a 65.7% completion percentage for 282 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, and an 88 passer rating. He is, of course, going to be the starter for this game, and barring an injury or, atrocious play and or us getting blown out, he should be the quarterback for the duration of the game. But there is always a possibility at some point you can end up seeing Rosen. So on the season, Ryan Fitzpatrick is 59% completion percentage for 717 yards, 3 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, and a 69.4 passer rating, which obviously is really not a very good stat line for a quarterback. So, but neither of our quarterbacks are playing well on the season, but the team's not playing well on the season, so not really a surprise there. Mason Rudolph, he did not play the last game, obviously because of the concussion, but he is going to be playing this game, so I did get his stats from the previous game that he did play, which was their game against the Ravens. In that game, he was 13 for 20, 65% completion percentage, 131 yards, 1 touchdown, and a 100.2 passer rating. On the season, he's completing 67% of his passes for 646 yards, 7 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, and a 102.5 passer rating, which obviously is a much better stat line for a quarterback on a season. So in the head-to-head matchup there, they have the advantage in that department as well. They have the advantage pretty much across the board, as does almost every team that we play this season, because that's how this organization has decided to build the team, and that's the decisions that they have made. Excuse me. So, rushing, Mark Walton led the way for us. 14 rushes, 66 yards, and a 4.7 average. Again, one of the few bright spots and potential carryover players for next year. I would say highly likely Mark Walton will be here. Kenyon Drake had 6 rushes for 21 yards, 3.5 average. Obviously, expected to no longer be a Miami Dolphin in the very near future. Ryan Fitzpatrick had 6 rushes for 13 yards, a score and a 2.2 average. Kalen Ballage, 3 rushes, 7 yards, 1 touchdown, and a 2.3 average. Also, too, though, again, this is another guy that, these players have to see leave, the team. So there's no loyalty, it's just another bad message, again, piling on to the bad messages that they send this team and the other, players around the league and so on and so forth. Anyway, Benny Snell led the way for them, 17 rushes for 75 yards and a 4.4 average. James Conner had 16 rushes, 41 yards, and a 2.6 average. In the passing game, Preston Williams, another bright spot for us, and one of the few, potential carryovers, 6 for 8 for 82 yards. Devontae Parker, 5 of 10, 55 yards, and a score. Allen Hurns, 3 of 3, 53 yards. Mike Gesicki, 4 of 4, 41 yards. Kenyon Drake, again, not expected to be with the team for much longer, and certainly not in this game. 3 of 4 for 37 yards. Albert Wilson, 1 of 2 for 22. James Conner led the way for them in the passing game last week, or in their previous game rather. 7 of 7 for 78 yards and a score. Deontay Johnson 2 of 2 for 14 yards. Benny Snell 1 of 1 for 14. And Dante Moncrief 1 of 2 for 11. They do also have Juju Smith-Schuster. He's not on this list. He did have some stats for the previous game, but I don't put wide receivers on the list. I leave them out if they didn't break 10 yards. Same thing with the running backs. That's how I do it for my stats, to try and trim it up a little bit. Anyway, the Dolphins defense last week, we had 2 sacks, 3 tackles for loss, and a pass defense. Pretty meager. Whatever. The Steelers, though, had 1 sack, 1 tackle for loss. You think, okay, not great so far. But then they had a forced fumble as well, a fumble recovery, 2 interceptions, and 10 passes defensed. Now, another one of my predictions is they might not end up having 10 passes defensed, but I think that their defense is going to have a solid day. Again, I think Minkah Fitzpatrick is going to get an interception. I think that they are going to win the turnover battle, but I think you will also see an uptick in their sacks and tackles for loss. Now, there have been games where I've said that and I was correct. I was correct about that when the Patriots played us. I was also incorrect about that. I believe the Chargers game, I was incorrect about that. I thought that Joey Bosa and Melvin Ingram would get back there more. They did not. Although, to be fair also to me, and I'd like to be fair to me, Melvin Ingram did come out of that game pretty early on. So there was that. And Joey Bosa did get a sack. I believe he got at least 1. So, I do think that they will see an uptick in their sacks and tackles for loss. They'll probably see a little bit of a downtick in their passes defensed. And maybe even the interception. Maybe they only get 1. Maybe it's only that Minkah Fitzpatrick interception that I'm predicting. But I do think that they will win the turnover battle, and I think that they will have an uptick in their sacks and tackles for loss. I think our running game is going to suffer, especially since Kenyon Drake's not going to be there. Daniel Kilgore's out again. And so, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Again, any given Sunday, what have you. As for the score, again, really, so the factor, the any given Sunday factor is really, again, are we going to get destroyed or are we not? Because I think it's almost a guarantee that we're going to lose every game. Why? Again, 1, because we are designed to be bad. Yes, that the players are playing, with heart. Although with every game that passes, we are seeing more and more frustration boil up from these guys, especially out of I was going to say the veterans and the leaders like Bobby McCain and Xavier Howard, but also Christian Wilkins, the first-round pick from this year. So we're seeing that bubble up more and more and more. We're seeing more talent leave and so on and so forth. So, we'll see how long these players, at some point, it's likely that these players end up just quitting. If we remain on track to be historically bad, if we end up going to 0-7, and especially if the Pittsburgh Steelers do end up destroying us and embarrassing us on Monday Night Football, this game could be the breaking point for the locker room. It's national television. The entire world's going to be seeing it. So this could be that breaking point. It's possible, the locker room just could be like, yo, fuck this after this game. If we get, just utterly embarrassed, right? If they did for some reason end up blowing us out. Now, again, I think that's going to be really mostly contingent on whether or not, the Steelers offense plays well. I think their defense is going to play well and shut down our offense for the most part. I think that, they are going to probably score over 30 points. We're consistently giving over 30 points. We've definitely given up over 30 points against all the good teams that we've played. The Steelers are trending up, although they have obviously been struggling, so maybe not. But I'm thinking that they are probably going to get you know, let's say 31. They'll score 31, or let's just say 30. Let's say they get to an even 30, and like I said, the point spread is 14.5. I think the Dolphins are going to just barely cover the spread by half a point. So I think that they'll cover the spread by half a point, but will still lose by 2 touchdowns, which gives the Dolphins 16 points in that scenario. You know, I mean, I don't know why I'm changing it. My initial prediction was going to be 31-17. You know what? Fuck it. We'll just leave it 31-17. I don't know why I'm changing it. So 31-17 is my prediction. However, again, if their offense does play well and, you know, moves well on our defense and does not do what the Bills did and shoot themselves in the foot, and if they are actually able to punch it in, which I think is I think that they probably have a better chance of doing it than the Bills offense, frankly, at the end of the day. But who knows? We'll see. And you know, so I think it's going to come down to that. But if they do end up, you know, playing well and you know, start scoring points, and then especially too if they manage to get like a 2 touchdown lead, you know, early on in the game or something like that, 14, 17, 21 points, like I said, somewhere in that range, then I think that it's going to end up being a really, really long, embarrassing day for us and this team. And so it could potentially get out of hand really fast and, you know, end up in the, you know, mini blowout to blowout status. There is potential for that in this game. So, you know, the any given Sunday factor, is it going to be a mini blowout, or, you know, are we going to end up being able to keep it, you know, relatively close, you know, what have you. Again, I think that it's inevitable we're going to end up losing, because not just how this team has been designed by the coaching staff and front office, but also because of their on-field decisions seem to be, you know, in my mind, overwhelmingly pointing to the fact that they are intentionally trying to, and again, in the best framing that you can put it in, to be as fair as possible. If you don't, you know, if it offends you, that, you know, I say that they're intentionally trying to lose games. If you don't like that, then to be as fair as possible, because I like to be a fair person, the decisions that they are making are intentionally made so that way the odds of those decisions, whatever they are, whatever play call, what have you, being successful drastically go down, right? So they are intentionally putting us in a position where we have terrible odds of success, and thus we end up failing. So it's still the same thing, but whatever. I'm trying to be as fair as possible and frame it in the most fair way, but it's still pretty damning at the end of the day as far as I'm concerned. So that's that. Yeah, so that's really all I got for you guys. You know, that's how I see it. Like I said, I mean, at the end of the day, I'm really hoping that somehow, some way we can like surprise the world, surprise me. I mean, last week was the first game I really actually got to like feel some excitement for this Dolphins team and whatever. I mean, it's just been utter embarrassment and disappointment up to this point. And, you know, I actually got a little bit of excitement. I mean, if you were with me for my live stream, obviously I'll be doing one for the game tomorrow. But if you were with me, I was getting super pumped, you know, when we were up at halftime and had an opportunity to win that game. But the coaching staff just shit it away, in my view, on purpose. And so, you know, we'll see how it goes. Yeah. Anyway, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap it there, guys. I hope you guys enjoy my videos and my perspective, my analysis, and all that stuff. If you do, please make sure you hit the subscribe button. We are almost to 200 subscribers, and so I appreciate everybody who is currently a subscriber. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. Make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you hit the bell if you want to get the alerts. Leave your questions, comments, and concerns down in the comment section. Also, share my videos and my channel with your friends and family. And then, of course, as always, make sure you follow me on Twitter at Dillon Tartaro. And with that, I am out. I'll see y'all soon. Fins up.